Shabbat when we do this. Okay. What is the parasha about? We're still following the stories in the parasha. And I was just talking with my chavruta, my study partner, who's a conservative rabbi in Scranton, wonderful woman. And we said how there are so many rich, beautiful, wonderful, and hard stories in Bereshit. And there's Felice, hi. And we just run through them. We barely have time to stop at them. And then we get the Shemot, and then the 40 years and the time in Egypt just gets stretched out over 4 books, which is fine, but we wish we had more time on the stories in Bereshit. And now, green tea, that seems to be helping. Okay. And now we're going to spend a few weeks on one story, which is the story of Yosef's life. So it's so interesting. Something to notice is that the Torah is not a regular history book, but rather it careens along, just goes until it hits an intersection that it thinks is important. Then it might go one more intersection, then one more, then it might go again for a while, then it might stretch something over a few weeks. And it's just an interesting way to note that it's not like a regular history book, because history books don't do that. So it's a combination of history, of story, of role modeling, of our genealogy, our lineage, our legacy from God, our tradition, and halakha, Jewish law. It's a combination of all that. I think it's still the most popular book in history, I think. Okay, this parasha is Vayeshev Yaakov. That's the name of the parasha. Vayeshev, what's Vayeshev? Vayeshev settled, so he settled in Vayeshev Yaakov, Eretz Megorei Aviv, in the land of his father, where his father lived. That's in Israel. And then immediately it jumps. We know that the boys have all been born, the tribes. Remember, Rachel died in childbirth for Binyamin. And Yosef, the problematic child, the beloved child, his story is now rising. He clearly feels different from his brothers, for whatever reason, probably many reasons. One of them may be that he doesn't have a mother who's alive. Although I like to think Leah, which is my second name, took care of everybody. But he feels different. He has dreams of power, dreams of prophecy, but he feels the need to tell his brothers. Remember the 2 dreams with the sheaves of wheat and the bowing down to his sheaf in the middle? And is this registering for anybody? Get some nods. Yeah, okay, great. And then the stars bowing down to the moon and the sun. The brothers were not happy about that. And all that did was create jealousy, envy between them. They could not talk to each other in peace. One of my favorite phrases, not because it's happy, but because it just sticks out as something. They couldn't speak peaceably to each other. And I know that happens in families. And also, Yosef's father, Yaakov, loved him. It says clearly that he had favoritism, or it seems like it. And he made him a special coat. Now, this is something I learned from Rabbi Silver. I don't know if I mentioned it in this class ever, that what is kutonet pasim? Anybody know? Kutonet is a tunic, usually, a robe or a tunic. Anybody know what pasim means?
Stripes.
It means stripes. Yep. Milton, were you going to say something?
No, I just unmuted myself in case I would say something.
Oh, in case, just to be ready. Okay, Ted. What would you say? Kutonet pasim. A pas is a stripe or I guess a stripe would be the right thing.
Yeah.
So what does it conjure up for you when you hear kutonet pasim?
Was colorful.
Kohanim.
What did you say, Milton?
Kohanim.
Kohanim. Wait 1 second, Vivian. Why Kohanim? Priests? Why?
Well, they had
a tunic, right?
Yeah, Kohen Gadol had
100%. Vivian, what do you want to say?
No, I was thinking that it probably in those days was very difficult to make pasim, different colors and all that.
I don't know if that's true. Weaving, didn't they have weaving and looms?
I think that, yeah, but they had to get the colors. I think maybe it may have, maybe it meant aristocracy or something wealthy or something.
Very nice, beautiful. So that goes along beautifully with what Rabbi Silver said I'm about to explain. Anybody else want to offer something before I quote Rabbi Silver? Yes, Milton.
Well, on a technical basis, there was a limited color palette
That's what Vivian said, yeah.
from years ago. It's all vegetable sauces usually.
Right.
I'm thinking-
Or like tchelet came from the snail, remember?
right.
The blue,
It's
the
a
blueprint.
natural, it's not synthetic. And it was only around 1850 that they discovered how to make synthetically, how to make all these colors,
Nice. So this
especially
was
purple
way
color.
before then, purple, got it. Okay, so they did have purple. We know that from some of the colors, but we don't know how they made it. Okay, so it was limited. Now, why do we think it was rows of color? Any ideas on that? Why would pasim, which means rows or stripes, a pas is a row or a line, pas. Why would we think that it means color? I think it's because of paintings and because of things like Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. Once you see that and hear that, it's hard to unhear it. Like, why do we think that the fruit in the Gan Eden was an apple? The only reason we think is because somebody like Rembrandt or somebody else, don't remember who, I think Ted once corrected me on that. Somebody described it as an apple. There was
No. It's because in Latin, when they translated it, was the tree of good and evil. And the word for evil in Latin is malum, and the word for apple in Latin is malum. And so they assumed it was an apple.
Excellent. So every year you will remind me until I actually remember it. It will happen. It's probably the third time you've taught me this. But I did remember it was you who taught me. So I think I'm doing better. But in any case, at some point, even people who don't know Latin, somebody made a painting of it with an apple, put it in picture books, and then it perpetuated. That, I guess that's what, but you're right, that's the source. But it wasn't an apple, guys. It wasn't. And yet we all think it was. I mean, we know it isn't when we've learned it, but if we don't learn it, we think it's an apple. Okay. So here's the thing that Rabbi Silber explained, which is so beautiful. He looked at the second place.
Sita,
Kutonet, one
Can I
second.
have some water,
Tila,
please?
I'm putting you on mute. So he looked at another place in the Tanakh where it says Kutonet Pasim, one other place, and that was by Tamar, David's daughter. Okay. What is Kutonet Pasim? So look at this, makes so much sense. A pas is a line. This is a pas. It's a pas because it creates a line, right? Do you see that? Everybody see that? It creates a line. A Kutonet Pasim was for aristocracy. Thank you, Milton, or Vivian, or Vivian, whatever, both of you. That when somebody was royalty, they would have a kutonet, a tunic whose sleeve went past the pasim because they didn't do menial work. So it was called kutonet pasim because it covered this pas, this line of the wrist. So when Yaakov made it, so that's a completely different explanation of color. It doesn't say color anywhere in the Tanakh. Nowhere in the Torah does it say kutonet of color. But because somebody planted it in our heads or somebody interpreted it that way, that's why we think of it. I think Rabbi Silber's explanation is great. And I also think that the musical on Broadway is great. So, hey, they both work. I love it. I think it's a fantastic musical. But that doesn't mean that that's what it, but in any case, he gave him something that was obviously there's something to it that felt special. Police, you're sideways, just saying. Well, I'll go like this to see you. Okay.
Yeah.
So he makes him that. The brothers are very unhappy and they go off to take care of their sheep. And Yaakov maybe is trying to make peace. He sends Yosef after them. When they see him, they say, "Oh, here's the dreamer. He's coming. What should we do? Let's kill him," which is terrible. I mean, is that really the solution? Yeah, Vivian.
I don't know. I had a thought while I'm reading this, and Yosef was the one without a mother.
Correct.
And
I said that before. Maybe you missed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it maybe Yaakov gave him that Ketonet Pasim to show him that you're important too, even though you don't have a mother who loves you and all that. I love you, and it's like instead of Bimkom, instead
I
of
wonder then, you're right, but then
to
why
give him
didn't,
the love that a mother would normally give, but he had no mother.
right, like swaddling him almost.
Yeah.
But what about Benjamin? So whatever. We don't hear about it.
Benjamin came much later. He probably got some preferred treatment too, but the story goes around Yosef.
Nice,
I mean, He's the
beautiful.
one who
Yeah.
went to Mitzrayim. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a legacy of.
No,
what happened
100%.
to the-
100%. The Torah spotlights whatever the Torah thinks is important. Nice.
Yeah,
Okay, beautiful.
Because Abraham was told way back when that they're going to be slaves.
Yeah.
They'll be in a foreign
Thank
land.
you.
So-
Wait, hold that thought. That connects to the Torah. Hold the thought. No, that's great. That's great. That thought about Abraham being
They have
told
to
that
carry
actually-
out the
No, I
prophecy.
agree with you. Just hold the thought till we get to the Torah, okay? That
Yeah.
thought about Abraham. Okay.
Okay.
So what happens? Yehuda says, oh, we're not going to get any profit if we kill him. Hey, there happens to be caravans passing by. Let's sell him. He is sold. First, they threw him in a pit, remember? It says the pit was empty. Rashi says it was empty of water, but it had scorpions and snakes. Awful. What do the brothers do? They come back to Yaakov. They seem pretty heartless. They dip Yosef's special coat in goat's blood and show it to Yaakov. And he believes, or he seems to believe, that he died from a wild beast. In Egypt, Yosef is sold to Potiphar. And remember, there is a whole section on Yehuda.
Mm,
His two sons die. The same wife was passed on. Now the wife is in a chained situation where she is supposed to marry the third son, but Yehuda is not giving her to the third son. That's levirate marriage because he's afraid that the third son will die. And in the end, she knows that she's right. He comes down, she dresses as a harlot, she seduces him, she gets pregnant with twins. And then when he tries to say, oh, what's she doing sleeping around? She should be marrying my son. She sends the collateral that he had given her, and he owns up to it and he takes responsibility. That's a chapter in the middle of I'm just trying to rush through the Torah so that we know all the pieces, because I know this group and this group may find a connection to any of the pieces of the Torah. So I want to make sure I touch on them. Yosef rises to power in Potiphar's house, but Mrs. Potiphar, as Rabbi Silber calls her, it's so funny how he calls her that way. She tries to seduce him. He's good looking, he's young, and it says that he's good looking, and he won't. So she gets very angry. She accuses him of a rape or of trying to rape. He's jailed. Yosef interprets the dreams, remember, of the wine steward and the baker. And he asks the wine steward to remember him, but he forgets. Yosef stays in jail. Okay, that's the Parsha. Got it? We good with the Parsha? Ready for the Haftarah?
Yeah.
Ready or not? Here we come. Just a minute. I did pull it up, so give me a moment. It's Amos.
I have a quick word.
You may.
Okay. For me, the central moment in this story of Yosef
Yeah.
is the moment at which he says he is not the dream interpreter, God is. In other words,
Nice.
he's enabled by God. And in Shakespeare criticism,
Yeah.
there's a marvelous essay called Men or Marionettes. And the question is, we don't really have a video of a Shakespeare play. And the question is, were the characters men or marionettes? And it seems to me that if you begin to think about the whole story here, and you remember the incident with the Ish, that's another key, because Joseph is wandering around.
Wait. I love this, but it's
No,
not.
I'll be quick.
It's just not so connected to the Torah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The Ish is an angel placed by God. So God is in
We say,
control.
yeah.
That's the point. God is in
Nice.
control here.
Hold that thought. That's also connected to the Haftarah. Can both of you hold those thoughts?
Sure.
They're really connected beautifully to the Haftarah. That's great. Okay. Just hold it because you'll find it somewhere. And I'll tell you why. I'm prefacing it by saying that the Haftarah starts out seemingly very connected to the story of Yosef, actually about selling him, which is at the very beginning of the Parsha, or almost at the beginning. But then it seems to meander and go off into other tangents. But those tangents, I think, are connected to what both Vivian and Lance said. Or, I read 5 different books when I prepare. And different people had different explanations as to why the Haftarah is connected. I could have read another 5, and I had to give up. At some point, I had to stop. But you'll come up with connections. So let's go in the first one first. Sorry, let's do the first pasuk, which is the most clear connection. Ko Amar Hashem. This is a well-known sentence structure that happens in Amos. Amos lived at the same time as the previous prophets we've been learning, Hosea, Amos. This is Amos. Hosea, Rega. can't remember all those names. Isaiah lived at the time of Kingdom of Israel, but who was the other? There were a few. No. Just a moment. I can't remember, but Hosea, if anybody remembers who else we read from, I just can't remember the name right now. And Yeshayahu, Isaiah has his own 60 chapters and he's got his own. Amos is one of the, what we call the minor prophets, the 12. And the only reason they're called minor is because the amount of chapters are short, not that they themselves were considered minor by God. And therefore they're grouped together. I do not remember all their names by heart, at least not in order. So this sentence structure appears. There's even a song. But this is, so that is about, there were 3 sins of Damascus, and the 4th one I will not forgive. So God has used this through the mouth of Amos many times, 7 times. This is the 8th time. What does God say? For 3 sins of Israel, I was willing to forgive. But on the 4th one, no, I'm not willing to revoke it or do tshuva. What was that? Al michram bakesef tzaddik, that they sold for silver a righteous person. So Yosef is known as, anybody know?
Tzaddik.
Yosef HaTzadik, exactly. Yosef is known as, like we have Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our teacher, Avraham Avinu, Avraham our father, and probably others. Yosef is known in our literature as Yosef HaTzadik. And look, they really did sell him for kesef. They did sell him for pieces of silver. In fact, one of the sources said they sold him for 20 pieces, maybe, I think it said that. Each brother got 2 pieces of silver. The evion and a pauper, because Yosef didn't have his own money, but avur na'alayim, for shoes. Now that, or sandals. Now that's really interesting. What's with the shoes? Anybody know? There's a really famous, hi Robert.
It's the Haftarah Harogei Malchut.
Yes, exactly. The 10, I don't know what that's called in English. The
Martyrs.
10 martyrs, thank you, who were killed by the king. That's why they're called the people who were martyred. Malchut is kingdom. You could say God also, because God agreed to it. So Moshe, do you want to tell us a little bit more about this Asara Harugei Malchut?
What I remember is that I guess it was the Roman prince or general came to the great scholars of the day asking what should be the judgment of somebody who kidnaps someone for
right.
money, and they all answered that the death penalty.
He comes to the sages, correct? That's somebody who kidnaps, actually, right?
I thought I said kidnaps.
Oh, maybe you did. You know what? My brain went off for a second. Yes, kidnapped, sold, correct. Go on. Yep.
And so the Roman general says, well, we can't do it. I can't punish the ones who actually did it, but you are their offspring, so to speak. You're the ones who represent the ones who did this, and therefore you.
That's right, because you're Jews.
You're going to be punished by death.
Right, because 10, remember there were 10 brothers. Yosef is number 11, and Binyamin is 12. Binyamin wasn't there. Binyamin was home with his father. So yes, so you will be, and then they were all, now they didn't all live at the same time. So we don't know if it was just threaded together to make the story. Now, do you know, Moshe, when we recite this poem, this?
Of course, on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av.
Nice, on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. So on Yom Kippur, we do it because we say Mavet Tzadikim Mechaperet, or that the death of righteous people atones for sin. So we say it for that reason. The reason we say in Tisha B'Av is because it's one of the kinot, one of the liturgical sad elegies, I think they're called, that the sad liturgical poems that we recite all day as much as we can on Tisha B'Av, that tells about sad things in our history. So they're actually said for 2 different reasons. I love it. It's one of my favorite poems because it's beautifully, it rhymes beautifully in Hebrew. Each one of the sages are highlighted for a different reason. But where's the shoes part, Moshe? Do you know?
Yeah, that they bought sandals with the money that they got from selling
right.
Yosef.
Right. So let's keep
that's
that
the midrash anyway.
Yes, that's the measure. Right. This is all midrash, but that's okay because that's That's how there's a connection. So
Speaking of Midrash, what I remember learning when I was in school, elementary school, was that the Ketonat Pasim was a coat that was Adam, that God made for Adam. And that's
oh
what
yeah,
gave to
nice.
Yosef.
Yeah. So it was aristocracy because of that, or had a level of, I don't know, dignity, kavod, honor. Is that what you're thinking, Masha?
I just remember that was the Midrash that I learned in elementary.
Nice. Okay. Yes, Ted.
Well, those are interesting connections, but it would be a little odd for Amos to be castigating the people of Israel for the sale of Joseph. I think what we should focus on here, because this is such an important passage, is that in the previous chapter, Amos has used the same formulation,
Correct.
the other nations, but always in political terms. And here he is attacking Israel in moral terms.
Very nice. So that's
You
no,
sell the
that's-
righteous for money and the poor for a pair of shoes.
right.
That is, you go out and buy your, what are they called? Manula Blancos? Is that
I
it?
don't know.
Anyhow, they're expensive shoes. They're, $800, $1,000, while there are people living in the streets.
Right.
That's what Amos is upset about.
Right. So there's a few layers. And so let's just make sure
Yeah.
that we understand there are a few layers here and a few ways to understand it. I just want to make that clear. I think that the Midrash is based, though, on this pasuk. That's how Eila Ezkara came about. So I just wanted to make sure we mention it. But I agree with you, Ted. And again, from everything that I've read, and I have like 5 books laid out here, which you can't see, but see, I have all these books here. Okay, there's more on a stool next to me. So it's really interesting because different people have different explanations. And what you said is exactly, in fact, I can quote, however, it's very difficult to explain in the context of the Haftarah, which is not about Yosef and makes no other references. We're about to see there's no other reference to Yosef. And it doesn't make sense for the prophet Amos, by the way, it was Hosea and Micha, who we also learned about. He's addressing the kingdom of Israel. How can he blame them, Yosef's descendants, for the sale of Yosef? Therefore, the Midrash is not suggesting he's referring to it, but that the Midrash wants us to take what the Haftarah says about selling a tzaddik for money and use it to better understand the sale of Yosef. So it's actually throwing light backwards. So let's continue reading. I do want to read the Haftarah so that we can talk about it a little bit more. But this pasuk, it just, you can't skip over the Asara Harugei Malchut, the 10 martyrs. You have to mention it because it's so connected. So now he's speaking to the people. He is not happy with them. I know this often has, understanding, oh, never mind, that's not important. Who trample the heads of the poor into the dust of the ground, make the humble walk a twisted course. I don't know what that is. Father, okay, this is awful. Father and son go to the same girl, meaning the same prostitute, and thereby profane my holy name. Now, I just want to stop for one moment. When we say that God is willing to forgive 3 sins, what does that bring up for you? 3 sins. Anybody, does that resonate with anybody? The 3 sins for Israel. I'm not talking about for other nations. 3 sins, three biggies. Giving you a hint.
Adultery,
Adultery,
avodah
avodah, idol worship. Murder. Right. So one way of understanding is that it's not that the 3 sins were so bad and God was still willing to forgive. And yet, what was the problem? And the Malbim says that the 3 sins, Ashkosha Pishay, remember, Pishay are the God to forgive 3. But the 4th sin is not necessarily an additional sin. Rather, the 4th sin was the manner in which the people transgressed the first 3 sins. The vehemence, the enthusiasm that characterized the transgressions added a new and despicable dimension to these sins, turning them into a 4th wholly intolerable sin. So if we look at this thing about the father and son going to the same prostitute, that's an example of taking adultery and taking So it's funny because adultery actually, according to halacha, it's not only adultery, because adultery is only a married woman sleeping with another man. But I think that's adultery. But it's any sin that's gilui arayot, incest or inappropriate sexual behavior. Let's go that direction.
But that recalls also Judah and Tamar. The father and sons go to the same girl.
Yeah, but they were dead. And that's according to halacha. Actually,
Evil.
well, they go at the same time. But wait, one second. I do want to contextualize that. It's not that it's wrong what you said. It's true. Okay, it sounds awful. But the truth is that has to do with yibum. And that has to do with when a man dies. Again, we don't do that today. But then it's allowed. That's the right way to do it, actually. The right way to do it is that if somebody dies, then his brother, if he didn't leave any descendants, then his brother should do the yibum. And at the time, I guess a close kin could do it. So I hear you, Ted, and I hear the connection, but that's the right way to do it. They were doing it in the wrong way.
But the way Judah did it wasn't the right way to do it.
No, I agree. But he says Tzadkami Meni Tamar, that she was more righteous. She knew what was right. She was showing him the right way. I mean, okay, so it's a little mixed here. But I think that I'm not disagreeing. I think it's a nice connection. Remember, I said I didn't see that connection. I'm very impressed with the connection. I just don't think that it's not like, a dad gives his son, hey, hot tip, I went to a great prostitute, you should go. Like, that's what it feels like. So that feels a little different from the Yehuda and Tamar. And the whole beauty of the Yehuda and Tamar story is that Yehuda took responsibility, not once, but even afterwards, twice when they find the silver, even though Binyamin didn't actually steal it, he still was willing to take responsibility. Okay, but thank you for that connection. Continuing on, I just wanted to connect that to the 3 sins, and there'll be more. It's not necessarily in the order that we said, but that's not important. Continuing, they recline by every altar on garments taken in pledge and drink in the house of their God wine bought with fines they impose. So what they're talking about, sorry, they recline by every altar. They're talking here, he's talking about the altar of the idol worship. So this is about taking the idol worship to another level. And again, the way the commentaries understand it, garments taken in pledge are from poor people. That they were willing to not just take advantage and exploit poor people by keeping their pledges and not having compassion, but then they use it as if to rub it in their faces for their own idol worship. They reclined on these cloaks or these garments that they took as a collateral and drink in the house of their God wines bought with fines they imposed. Like, they insisted on imposing fines even when people were destitute. And by the way, that goes back to this, the Evyon. That goes back to that this is the way the kingdom of Israel behaved, that they were willing to not just transgress these sins, but they did it in an awful way, like in a really uncompassionate and I don't know if somebody else can think of a better word. Okay. God continues, that I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose stature was like the cedars, who was stout as the oak, destroying his boughs above and his trunk below. So God is reminding them, I'm your God. Look what I did for you, and look how you're treating me. I brought you up from the land of Egypt, led you through the wilderness. That seems to come up a lot. 40 years to possess the land of the Amorite. That's the land of Canaan. I raised up prophets from among your sons and Nazarites from among your young men. Is that not so, people of Israel? So one of the commentaries said that I raised up prophets and you led them astray, like giving wine to people who took a vow not to drink wine. Oh, here it is. Sorry, it wasn't the Parshan, but you made the Nazarites. Remember, a Nazir is somebody, or Nazirah, could be a man or a woman, who takes a vow to not cut their hair, to not desecrate, like not have spiritual uncleanliness like the Kohen, and not to drink wine or grape juice. Ordered the prophets not to prophesy. Prophecy? Which one is it, prophesy or prophecy? Prophesy. Right, let's see what they say here. No, that's just explaining it. I will slow your movements as a wagon is slowed when it is full of cut grain. Light shall fail the swift, the strong shall find no strength. The warrior shall not save his life. You know, God is really saying, you're really going to pay for this. The bowman, is that correct? Bowman. The bow is B-O-U-G-H, right? We had that before. The bowman shall not hold his ground. The fleet-footed shall not escape, nor the horseman save his life. By the way, this reminds me a little bit of the wording from Shirat Hayam, where it's like a play on words that, remember, God said God took us out of Egypt. Where was that? And remember in Shirat Hayam, in the Song of the Sea, all of the horsemen and the chariots and those on foot all died in the Yam Suf because God brought the water on them. So I think this is playing off of that. Even the most stout-hearted warrior shall run away unarmed that day, declares the Lord. Hear this word, Shimu et hadavar hazeh, people of Israel, that the Lord has spoken concerning you, concerning the whole family I brought up from the lands of Egypt. So this is an interesting pasuk. But before we go to that, let's actually read the rest of it together. I think we'll just read it so that we have it. You alone have I singled out of all the families of the earth. This feels like sweet. But then God says, but because you're the chosen people, I'm also holding you accountable. That is why I will call you to account for all your iniquities. So this pasuk is really singled out as both a beautiful pasuk as well as a little scary, but also holding us accountable. I don't know what this is. Can two walk together without having met? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a great beast, I wasn't 100% sure about this. Great beast let out a cry from its den without making a capture. Does a bird drop on the ground in a trap with no snare there? Does a trap spring up from the ground unless it has caught something? When a ram's horn, a shofar, im takash shofar ba'ir, do the people not take alarm? Can misfortune come to a town if the Lord has not caused it? This goes back to what Vivian said and what Lance said. So we are going to speak about what's behind this prophecy and how it connects to the parasha, but here's one of the hints, that things don't happen without God being behind it. So that doesn't mean that the brothers are not accountable. They're still accountable for their deeds, but it was part of a greater plan of God. It's just they didn't have to be the ones to execute it. So Vivian reminded us that in Brit Ben Abitarim, God told Abraham that his children would descend to Eretz Lo Lahem, to a strange country, and stay there 400 years. Doesn't matter, they were taken out before, but that was the prophecy. The brothers were actually a hand in all of this, that God was behind it. And this is, so, okay. So we have the first pasuk, which a little bit stands on its own with its teaching. Then we have the part that Ted was saying about the way we acted. But now we have the third part that reminds us that there's a connection between everything and there's somebody behind everything. Indeed, my Lord God does nothing without having revealed its purpose to his servants, the prophets. And this is the last pasuk. Sorry. A lion has roared. Who can but fear? My Lord God has spoken. Who can but prophesy? So people are welcome to open up a Tanakh or look at it, but I do want to say what came up for people and then to tell you a little bit of what I read and have a little bit of a discussion. Lance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I see what we've just read as a coded message.
Mm-hmm.
Coded message,
yeah,
which is not about the Israelis, it's about the Assyrians.
Okay.
And the idea, it comes from the book of Nahum. How many of you have read the book of Nahum? Anybody?
I think I did once, but I don't.
Okay.
Oh, Ted
The book of Nahum, if you compare that to the book of Jonah, you will find that in the book of Nahum, God is someone who basically carpet fires, whatever you call carpet, kills the bad guys completely. The difference between a judge in New York City and the Israeli army kills the terrorists, doesn't let them go free, and levels their homes. Okay, no mercy, no compassion.
That's not exactly true. I mean, sometimes they capture them and put them on trial.
Yes, occasionally, but
when they don't kill them, yes.
Yes, and the problem is that Israelis are trying to be nice to the world and whatever.
A
That's
whole other discussion. Yeah.
the point here is there are two gods. There's the God of Moses, who is, basically forgiving, and he's still a puppet master, but he's basically a forgiving guy. If you repent, you do well, you blah, 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 you're going to be fine. I just will leave you with this one line.
Yeah.
John Updike compressed Dante's Divine Comedy into this message. The only way to get into heaven, capital H, is to go through hell, small h. And that's the story of
Right.
Joseph, if you think about it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that comment. Anybody else would like to comment on the Haftarah, connections, thoughts? Love to hear your thoughts about this. Whatever came up for you. Come up for people. Vivian, I asked you to hold your thought. You ready? To tell-
Okay.
You ready to say something?
I was just thinking that
Yeah.
it seems to show that everything is preordained. Everything has a purpose, and everything that happens, it's not just happenstance that it happens, but it's something that's preordained and
Well,
it's-
preordained, does that take away free choice?
Well, it sort of contradicts itself, where you still have choice, but you will choose what's preordained. It's counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
the idea is that although you do have a choice, you will choose what has been preordained.
But,
Okay, thank you. Ted, yes.
but what the prophets want is precisely for the people to change. What the prophets are doing is saying, you're doing wrong, change that, make a different choice.
Mm.
So it's not so preordained. They do have will.
Nice.
If they don't change, then this is what's going to happen. When you read the prophets, you always have to read if. There's what I call the prophetic conditional. When Jonah says to the people of Nineveh, yet 40 days and Nineveh will be destroyed, what he's saying is, if you don't change, yet 40 days and Nineveh will be destroyed. But if they do change, which they do, then Nineveh survives. So what the prophets are saying is, you have a choice.
You still always have a choice. I feel like a little bit, it's like God has certain possibilities of outcome. So God may always be behind it, and yet we have a choice at any juncture to make a decision to go one way or another. Does that make sense? That's the way I see it. I also, as trained as a coach, that just works so well for me, that people have choices at every juncture. And sometimes we're ready to make a switch and sometimes we're not. I mean, that's the way I see it. And then God finds another path that works. So for me, it works together, but I don't know if that works for everybody. So thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. Yes, Vivian. I just don't want to spend only time on that, but please. Go
Yeah,
on,
I
Vivian.
was thinking that
A rebuttal.
you have a choice about all kinds of things, but the choice of Eretz Israel being the land for the Jews, that's no choice, because it's that land. None of them.
Powerful.
You could, people have suggested places in Africa, places of different kinds of
Uganda,
places.
remember?
No,
Uganda.
none of that works. Only Eretz Israel works.
Yes,
No choice.
fighting words. I love it. I just read about women. They were singing a song. It's really beautiful. They said they stormed the heavens. So I hear Vivian storming the heavens here. Thank you. Wonderful. I want to, unless somebody has something you want to say, I want to bring.
I would argue that the land of Israel extends into Iran and into the
Whoa, no,
world.
I'm capping that. Nope, I don't want to go off. I don't want to go off on that tangent. This is a
I
little
go off
different.
in tangents, I'm sorry.
I know. So I'm pulling you back. Okay. So what I want to say is from this book, one of my favorite, Haftarah Unrolled, written by a woman. This feels really interesting. So this goes back to what Ted said, and probably others. I'm sorry if I don't remember everybody, but remember we said, maybe it's not specifically about that first pasuk, the medrash about one way of interpreting it is midrashically, that this feeds into this midrash about the 10 martyrs and about the brothers selling for pieces of silver and then buying shoes. Okay. But maybe, because it couldn't be that Amos is really accusing this kingdom, you can't really be accusing them of selling Yosef because they weren't alive then, but rather it should shed light, and this I found to be new thought for me, on the role of money in the story of Yosef. So I want to bring her words to you. Her name is Kira Sirote. So she says like this. In the original context of the Haftarah, the Jewish people, remember we read it, and anybody could look it up if you have it, are accused of having judges that are so corrupt and so easily bribed, they would take the price of a pair of shoes as their payoff. What kind of person would falsely convict an innocent man for a bribe of a pair of shoes?
Yeah.
So she says most people have some price. I have a joke about that, but it's inappropriate for a rabbi to say it, so I won't say it. It's a funny joke. I'm sorry. And it's being recorded, so I don't think I can say it. But almost anybody can be made to portray their principles. Not everybody, but if the temptation is high enough or if the cost is high enough. But when a person accepts an inexpensive everyday object as a bribe, then perhaps the betrayal too is a minor everyday occurrence. And then maybe it's not betrayal, but it actually reflects that person's value system, because to that person, money is far more important than justice. Now, I don't exactly agree with her next thought. I'd love to hear your ideas. There's a pasuk. No, not that one. Oh, sorry. This I might agree with. Remember the dream of the sheaves of wheat bowing down to Yosef. And remember that the brothers were very upset about the dreams, both dreams. So they said, what are you going to be, a dream maker? You're going to have power over us. She brings an interesting idea. I want to hear your thoughts. She says, the family business at the time, was it farming? Remember where the brothers went? What were they? What was their business?
They were shepherds.
They were shepherds, exactly. They were not farmers. And as a lifestyle, herding is very different from agriculture. A shepherd, as much as we may think of them as not high level of society, they're free to roam wherever they want. They're not dependent on other people, not even necessarily on the weather so much. In contrast, a farmer is land-bound and dependent on the civilization around him. Shepherds bow to no one, farmers bow to everyone. I would like to hear your thoughts about that. Hi, Faye. Shepherds bow to no one, farmers bow to everyone because they're landlocked. So she suggests that perhaps they were angry because they saw Yosef's dream as a prophecy that they would have to switch their livelihood from shepherding to farming. And they were very upset about that. And then she suggests that it is about money and about power. And where do they see money? So this is where I'm not sure I agree with her, but it's interesting. Remember what we said, that first they threw him in a pit and they're deciding what to do to how they should kill him or what they should do with him. So first they say, let's kill him. Vayomer Yehuda lechav. Yehuda, Judah, says to his brothers, he's as much a part of this story as Yosef is. Ma betza, what will be the profit? Ki naharog et achinu. What will be the profit if we kill our brother, v'chisinu et damo, and we cover up his blood? Let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. So she is suggesting that money is very important because Yehuda is, well, maybe this is true. Maybe it's not important to Yehuda. Maybe I always think of Yehuda as doing it to save Yosef's life. Because no matter what, even if he sold into slavery, theoretically, you could try to rescue him eventually if he could follow the caravan of Ishmaelites later on, or he knew they go down to Egypt. But he's using the terminology of prophet in order to grab his brother's attention. And that makes sense to me. That even if Yehuda himself didn't care so much about money, maybe his brothers did. And that's what caught their attention. And that shows that money was a very high value for them. What are your thoughts of that?
Hmm. Hmm.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
they
what I'd
make
say.
you think
Yes,
of
Vivian.
the money that they hid in the bags when they want to bring Binyamin. When Yosef said, you have to bring your younger brother,
Nice.
and they put money in there, and they thought they would buy him off in order, with the money.
But what did the brothers do? Did they keep
Yeah.
the money?
They hid money in
Who was they? No, Yosef did.
Yosef, he hid the money in Binyamin's bag, so they would have.
Wait, 1 second. No, he
And-
did not. Wait, Vivian, that's not true.
Yeah.
Can I just make order here? First, he returned their money from the first time they went down. That's not
Yeah.
Binyamin's bag. Everybody got their money back. Binyamin wasn't even there.
Yeah,
When they
right.
came down a second time, or when they came down with Binyamin, he hid the goblet in Binyamin's bag. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, the goblet, right.
So let's not
Which was
confuse it.
money.
But that's a very good point. Excellent, by the way, she makes the same point. Well done. That Yosef is testing them and saying, well, is money the most important thing? Because he returned their money. They could have said, oh, we didn't notice that the money was returned and keep it, but that's not what they did. They brought the money back and they said, can we give the money back to you? You put money, we weren't expecting that.
Yeah,
So that was a good test that they had shifted their values and they realized money. Very nice connection. Well done. This group is awesome. Anybody else have a thought? Thank you, Vivian.
yeah,
Anybody else have a thought about money?
money. Where does it say kesef over lasocher? Where it's money that's
I
acceptable
think
everywhere.
you should look it up.
Everywhere
Google
where
it, Google
But it
it.
was very
Google it.
important that the money should be worth something everywhere, that it shouldn't be money of one particular place, but not acceptable in other places. It's like gold, for example, would be
Well,
money.
that's kesef. So I'm not sure where that's from, your expression, but why is that relevant to here?
Well, kesef would be silver.
Correct, but why is that relevant?
Yeah.
Kesef over lasocher.
Yeah, where does it say that? I don't
No, I
remember.
understand, but why is that relevant?
Abraham.
It's yeah, when he bought when he bought Marat HaMachpelah, that was so important that it should be a place of burial forever. It would
No,
always.
I get that, but why is
Yeah.
that relevant to our story?
I think it's relevant because maybe at that time they only used the money of Mitzrayim, but not maybe over Lasocher, maybe not universally accepted.
Well, they're coming from Canaan and they gave kesef.
Yeah,
But that's so, I mean, what I hear the connection, first of all, beautiful that you remember that. I didn't remember that. Thank you, Milton.
trying to have some connection.
No,
there.
well, nice connection, but the kesef does seem to be, it was a universal, absolutely, a universal
Acceptance, yeah.
I don't know, there's a word for it, but somebody can help me out there. But they bought it from the Ishmaelim. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver and they used silver to pay, I believe, in Egypt, and they got back silver. So yes, that's true. Okay, but the more important thing is that, I think, and by the way, kesef is also in the first pasuk of our Haftarah. It's also the same connection, this universal means of payments, currency, that's universal currency seems to be silver at the time. Others, but at least silver for sure. Thank you, nice connection.
Yeah,
But
I have a negative connection. A negative connection would be that the importance of money has been used by the anti-Semites as a way to get back at the Jews and to complain that all they think about is money and making
Shylock, like Shylock,
and all that.
Vivian,
like
like
Shylock, yeah. And it goes to all that, and the protocols of elders of Zion emphasize that, and it's a whole fraudulent lie.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of poor Jews who don't have money, but that's not the view of the anti-Semites. They think all the Jews are rich, all they interested in money.
and power.
And well, money is power.
So thank you. That's sad, but
That's-
very nice
that's
connection.
sad.
Well
Sorry.
done. No, it's okay. I just
Yeah.
want to leave us with a different thought, a slightly different thought, which I thought was really beautiful. Yosef, for all of his failings, and he did mature. I see him so much as somebody who matured over his life. Remember, everything he touched, he prospered. He did everything well. He was a great organizer. People really seemed to like him and follow his lead. But I at least agree with this. You don't get the feeling that money is so important to him and power is so important to him. He uses it as a tool and it comes naturally, but he uses it to help bring his family down. He uses it to help further Paro's power in and authority. Sorry, who said something? I'm looking. And he uses it to help the people of Egypt by storing away. But I don't ever get the feeling that Yosef is actually money hungry and power hungry. In fact, he's very forgiving of his brothers. And it just, you don't get the feeling that he uses the money for himself to further, it's just, there's a nice feeling that, and I'm just going to quote what she said. To Yosef, money was simply a tool to ensure that people have what they need, which is God's plan in this world. Somebody who has more money should be giving it to people who have less money. He never gave it power over himself, never allowed it to cloud his sense of right and wrong. Throughout the many stories that Torah records of Yosef, we see he never compromised his principles under any circumstances. And that's why he's called Yosef Tzaddik. And I thought that was really, really, really beautiful. And I wanted to leave us with that thought. And thank you for sharing this time and thinking about the Torah portion coming up, as well as what the Haftarah, how it connected. I told you I love it. We will have next week is Hanukkah, right?
Yes.
I'm leaving Thursday evening, so I can have the class. Were people available next Thursday? 11:15. Do we have a time that's better? Is 11 better? 11:15? Can we raise our hands here? Raise your hands for 11. 2, 3.
Thursday.
It's Hanukkah. 4, 11 is good.
Wednesday.
Usually we're at
Wednesday.
Cleveland
I'm
for the
sorry.
class
I
at
apologize.
10.
I teach on Thursday too, so I always forget. My mistake. It's like the second time I've done that. Is 11 o'clock on Thursday, on Wednesdays a good time for you, Vivian? We already had 5 people. Does that work for you, Vivian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see, Lance. 11 on Wednesdays, like today. You too, Moshe, Robert, Moshe, Robert,
Okay.
Helen. All right, it's out. Faye, are you
That's
able to do
good.
11 on Wednesdays? You're muted. I don't know what you're saying.
It's fine.
If it's made at 11, I'll make it 11. It's just reorganizing my time a little bit. It's not a big deal. Just
Okay, does 11 feel better to people than 11:15? Does that feel like a rounder? It's better for some people? No, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
11
yes,
is good.
Lance. I don't know why you're raising your hand. Do you want to say something?
Oh, no, it's 11
Oh,
o'clock.
no, you're just saying 11's good. Is 11 better? Like 11:15 kind of feels in the middle. That's the only reason not to do it.
Yeah, I prefer 11. That's all.
11. Okay, then let's move it to 11. All right, we'll move it to 11. Is that good?
Yeah.
It also gives us a little, if I don't have something at 12, it gives a teeny bit of leeway to, to go over if it happens that we need to go over. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank
We'll do
you.
next week. We'll probably be doing the Haftarah for Hanukkah. And then another year we'll do the regular Haftarah for Mikes. As if that ever happens. I don't know, but yeah, sometimes it happens, but we'll see. We'll see next week. All right, my friends. Be well. Shabbat shalom. Have a good day.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.